So do you have a now? You told me. Do you have a schedule for where this thing's going to show?
Well, it's still kind of open because it's been trying to get it organized. I don't know whether some of the schools are shut at the moment because of the holidays and whatever. I've been trying to get.
Some places have summer school going on, so they're open.
Yeah, I tried phoning around on Thursday. It was a holiday, turned out,
Yeah.
and Friday I think a lot of people just took it a long weekend, and
Yeah.
so
you're still in the
process.
works,
Yeah, and
so
actually I'd like to throw it out to people there if anyone
has a place where they can screen it.
Exactly. I mean, Friday we're playing Rushville at the Plains Theatre, and on Monday we've got Billy Mills lined up. Although the thing that suddenly dawned on me yesterday with Billy Mills is that, because I was going to do afternoon and evening, but suddenly dawned on me they have all those windows along the side, so leakage of light might be an issue.
What are you using a DVD and
No, it's off HD, and I've got an HD projector and
Okay.
a huge, like a 16-foot by 9-foot screen, so it looks pretty impressive.
okay?
So, but that's part of the journey, is just coming here and sort of making it happen. And
Okay.
so,
Well, let's do this. Good morning, good morning. Once again, you are listening to KILI FM radio, the voice of this great Lakota nation for the last 26 years. Earlier this year, February 25th, KILI Radio celebrated their 26th anniversary of being the voice of the Lakota nation, and I always want to thank people over those 26 years who contributed their voices. Richard Charging Cloud was just here. He is one of those voices that helped to make KILI Radio the voice of this great Lakota nation. I thank him very much. I want to offer words of encouragement and a thank you to all of those runners who took part in the 27th annual Sacred Hoop Run. It wrapped up yesterday after running the entire distance around the Black Hills. They finished up where they started at Bear Butte yesterday afternoon. There was a meal and an honoring, and I want to thank all of them very much for participating and making the sacrifice and sharing in the run around the Sacred Hoop 500-mile run around the Black Hills. Also, this time before we do our interview, I want to offer words of encouragement and prayers. There are a number of Sundances that are continuing through the weekend. There are Sundances going on at Jerome LeBeau's up at Thunder Valley. Joe Swiftbird has a Sundance going on. I offer words of encouragement and prayers to all of those who are dancing over the next couple of days, who are dancing for the people and praying for the people. I offer my words of encouragement to them. You're listening to KILI here on this Saturday, June 27th. I would like to very warmly welcome to KILI Radio Stephen Lewis Simpson. He is from Scotland. He has said he's been working on a documentary for the last 10 years, but in the meantime he has been working on some feature films. He did not start off in this life as a filmmaker. Turns out at the age of 18, Stephen Lewis Simpson was the youngest fully qualified stockbroker and trader in Britain, and 4 short years later he left that world. He moved to Los Angeles to work for the legendary Roger Corman's Concord Films. I think Roger Corman was king of the B movies, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He returned to the United Kingdom in May of 1993 and shot Ties, his first feature film, which he wrote, produced, directed, edited, and financed through his company, Roaring Fire Films. Well, he has been in filmmaking ever since, and he had a film that he was originally going to shoot in Edinburgh, Scotland, and it turned out that the way things work out, he ended up shooting it right here on Pine Ridge Reservation. It was called Rez Bomb, and it's described as a film production like no other, bridging 2 different worlds, Oglala Lakota and white America. So I'd like to very warmly welcome to KILI Radio, Stephen Lewis Simpson. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Oh, very well. Very well. Although it's quite early for me.
Early.
Well, for the drive up here and that sort of thing. I'm a late starter normally.
I hear you. So, well, you didn't really bat an eye when I told you that we were going to do this at 9 a.m. I mean,
No, but I have my priorities. There are certain things, flights and radio shows that'll get me up early.
okay. So, has it been 10 years since you started first coming to Pine Ridge?
Almost exactly. It was the end of July '99, the repatriation of the ghost shirt from a museum in Scotland. And I came out here and spent a few days here, and then went up to Cheyenne River and Pierre when the shirt came in, and then the ceremonies there, and it came back to Wounded Knee. And
So you came with the shirt? I mean, did you came to film it, to document the returning of it? Or?
yeah, I mean, it was sort of one of those things that it sort of just happened very naturally. I mean, I had been fascinated by the story of Wovoka for some time, and had been working on a screenplay that led up to, led up to Wounded Knee. And just one day I was sitting at home and the news story came on about the ghost shirt in Scotland, and the fact it was coming back here, and it was just a light bulb went off in my head. Instinctively I knew that I would be coming out and following it, and came out a little early, and sort of within about 50 minutes of being here I found myself at Camp Justice, and it was just, I guess, about 3 weeks after the two guys there had been murdered, and just started getting interested, involved in a lot of layers, and filmed some of the marches and interviewed some of the guys there, and it just sort of came in stages. But
So that was the beginning
yeah,
of the documentary, which is not done yet.
well, it's the thing is that I'm principally a fiction filmmaker. I make feature films,
Right.
and this was the second time I'd sort of dipped my toes into documentary, but it's not sort of my principal activity, and so I started filming, and I'd come out and I'd film more and more, and created this huge amount of material, and then I started assembling it into a cut, and it's currently about 4 hours long, which is very detailed and neat, but needs to be whittled down to being a sort of length that can manage people's attention span.
What length was that?
I imagine about 90 minutes to 100 minutes.
Okay.
But it's very comprehensive, but it's very much from people's voice here. I mean, it's narratively authored by the people I sit in front of. I go in with very few questions, and it's kind of like, what do they have to say? And it goes from sort of the creation story through to today, in people's own words. And it's quite beautiful that way, I think.
Well, let's backtrack here.
Mhm.
We'll come back to that. At 18, you were a stockbroker,
Yeah,
and 4 years later,
I woke up.
you went to L.A. to be a filmmaker.
Yeah.
I mean, you woke up. What do you mean? I mean,
Well, working, stockbroking is kind of as pointless a thing to do in many ways, because all you're doing is you're moving around bits of paper. It's sort of this strange society that we live in, that we place value in all these strange structures that the people at the top can do very well out of, but all they're doing is just moving around, paper and theoretical ownership of something, and
you're not implying it's a glorified Ponzi scheme or anything like that.
well, it's just, I mean, at the end of the day, I think we want to know that we're doing something in our lives that actually have real purpose and meaning, and
Have some worth to it, yeah.
yeah, and also just doing a 9 to 5 in an office is just not
Took
for a
you
human
4
being.
years to figure that out?
No, but it took me 4 years to get out, to get my escape route plan,
Your escape route.
Yeah, well, the other thing is that, I mean, where I kind of grew up, my sort of background, it was very natural that you leave school, you go to university, you get a degree, you become a professional one way or another. Now, my brain doesn't work for formal education. I need to learn things myself, and stockbroking actually can be quite entertaining, because it's almost like playing horses in a way, but but the thing with it is that you could become a professional without needing a degree, and that sort of appealed to me. And so, and then, but through that time, I was making amateur films, and I was writing, I was creating the groundwork. And then Roger Corman, the producer in LA, was the only place in the world I wanted to start, because, I mean, his legend. Unlike most legends, there's a little bit of fiction in there, but it is absolute fact that some of the greatest filmmakers in film history all got their first breaks. I mean, Martin Scorsese, Francis Coppola, Peter Bogdanovich, Jonathan Demme, Robert De Niro, James Cameron. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. All got their first major, feature films, directorial debuts, things like that. I mean, he's the only person for about 10 years that hired Jack Nicholson. He actually had Jack Nicholson write scripts for him so that Jack could actually put food on the table for his wife and kid.
Really?
Yeah. So, he was a real sputter of talent for cheap. I mean.
So, basically, a lot of people got their start.
Yeah.
Through Roger Corman.
Exactly.
And that's what I wanted to get to. I mean, how do you jump from Scotland to L.A.? And I mean, did you just go there and knock on Roger's door and say, "Hey, I want to be a filmmaker, and I think you're the place to start"? Or had you already made inroads before you came to LA?
Inroads before I came. I mean, I had when I was young in the film side, I was beautifully naive, and I look back and I think I wish I had that again. Nowadays I think twice before I approach somebody, thinking, well, is this likely or not? Whereas in those days, I shot big, and the first meeting. I mean, I grew up in the northeast of Scotland, and I was the first ever person to direct a feature film from there, and yet, so it's not there's not a community there to associate that the film world is real, and yet the first meeting I ever had with anyone in the film business, full stop, was Robert De Niro's company in New York, and I walked in off the street, and they gave me a meeting straight away. Which doesn't happen. I mean, the woman who gave me the meeting said it doesn't happen, but it that's the way it happened for me back then. It was quite beautiful, and it was so around that time I had a script that I started to send out to the companies that I admired, De Niro's being one of them, and I sent it to Roger Corman's company, and as is the case in the business, you send the script, it sits there and doesn't get read most of the time. So I was chasing it up one day, and an English guy picked up the phone in the script department, and I asked how he was working there, and he told me he was, interning there, as was a lot of people there. And I said, well, who do I speak to? He gave me a name, and I spoke to the person, and she said, well, come on through. And I gave up my job, jumped on a plane about a month later, and I landed with my bags in my hand, went straight to the office. Turns out the girl who I arranged it with had left, but the guy who'd taken over didn't care. He was like, well, fine, we're always happy to use free labor. I mean, and I didn't even have my first night's accommodation arranged, and it just all fell into place. I mean, it was wonderful. But again, I think there's that sort of innocent optimism that does that, and I wish I remembered how to create that,
So that was your foot in the door.
Yeah. And for me, to be honest, the most significant thing about the time I spent there was a demystification process, because the film industry does feel like this big illusion.
Right.
And I couldn't have started anywhere better, because Roger Corman, unlike pretty much everywhere else in the industry, he says, all right, we're going to make another movie. And it happens. It just happens, and it's quite automatic. I mean, there was a film I worked on where he went to the office, the studio on a Thursday, saw beautiful big sets there by his standards. They were primitive and small by most people's standards, and he thought, well, we'll use these again. There's 8 days coming up in the studio. So he went in the office on the Friday and said, we're going to make another movie. They rewrote an old script on the Saturday and Sunday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they cast, and the Thursday they were filming. That doesn't happen anywhere else. And the beautiful thing is that you go there and you experience that, and you actually realize it's not such a distant thing. It's not this, sort of impossible peak. You just basically have to roll your sleeves up and get on with it.
He makes it manageable.
Yeah. And he takes the fear out of that side of it. And in a sense, that's led all the way up to how I make my films and allowing Rez Bomb to work here, in a sense.
But at the time that you walked in there and then actually experienced that and saw that, he'd been at it for a few years.
Oh yeah.
So he had some infrastructure in that.
Yeah.
How do you jump from, learning the business and so forth, and then to do your own film? As laid down here, your first film, you wrote it and directed it and hustled the money. I mean, you did everything on it.
Mm-hmm.
You obviously have learned how to make it happen. How do you do that?
Well, in a sense, it's funny because the wonderful thing about film is I've broken down a lot of my type characteristics, if you like. I mean, I'm actually quite a shy person a lot of the time in my inherent character. But when you are determined enough, you just have no choice, and you
put your game face on and you go after it.
Exactly, yeah, beautifully put, and you just get on with it. And that was very much the case. And I was very lucky with the first film because even though I was shooting in a vacuum in terms of my hometown in Scotland where nobody had ever shot a feature film, 4 of my key crew came over from LA and were people that had worked at Roger Corman's. And there was a television company that had moved, in the old days they used to shoot news on 16mm film, and that had stopped quite a time before that, but they still had the equipment. And I went in one day to ask about how much it would be to rent some lights, and I found out they had pretty much all the equipment that I needed. And the guy I was speaking to was wonderful, a wonderful human being, and got behind me and basically said, well, whatever you need, we'll give you. So I suddenly actually had an infrastructure. And, again, because it's sort of that thing where, when somebody, I think, sees something in somebody where they're really striving for something that nobody has done in the area, then and they get behind it, it's a wonderful thing. And actually it's similar with us filming here where, there's not been much happened here, or we did a little in Rushville as well, and this, when people kind of embrace it, the community embraces it, it makes it for a wonderful experience.
So we've jumped forward. We're talking about Rez Bomb now.
Yeah.
Now originally this piece was to be done in Edinburgh.
Yeah. Oh, and the wonderful, funny thing is on the DVD there's a lot of extra features, and one of them is the opening 9 minutes that I shot in the late 90s in Edinburgh. I had an investor who was interested in making a certain type of film, and he said, well, I'll give you some money to go out and shoot the opening, and so I went away and wrote it, and we shot this opening 9 minutes, and then the promise of the rest of the finance failed to materialize.
That happens.
That happens too often. Yeah, and so I pursued it for a little while, and then went off and did a couple of other features there, and then had other investors that gave me some money, basically to do pretty much whatever I wanted because they'd been involved in a previous film that they liked. And so I thought, well, this for me was the script I wanted to do, but by that point I didn't want to shoot another feature in Scotland, and I'd gotten to know Pine Ridge, and I thought, well, it would work very well here. And but also, I mean, we had a small budget, but I thought, well, rather than spending it elsewhere, at least I could spend it here, and actually it could go into the pockets of people that it was actually meaningful. I mean, there's nothing worse than paying film actors and film crew union minimums and hearing them grumble about it, whereas it's actually not a bad day's wage. It's much nicer to come to somewhere where that day's wage is actually a nice day's wage. Exactly, yeah. And so and also just visually, it was much more interesting for me. I mean, I've been coming out here enough to have a sense of where I would shoot it and all those sorts of things. So when I looked at all the other places other than Scotland, it was actually strangely a natural fit for me compared to a lot of other places I could.
So did you have to make a lot of changes to the script or anything to move it from Edinburgh to here?
Some, but the core is very much the same. I mean, it's about a guy and a girl from different backgrounds. In the original script, it was sort of an upper middle class guy and a working class girl from a housing estate, and housing estates in Edinburgh are pretty grim. I mean, it's Edinburgh is the sort of world of Train Spotting, which was a big film out of there years ago that showed kind of some of the seamier side of it.
The underbelly.
Yeah. Whereas the other side of it, it's one of the most beautiful cities in the world, and So there was those contrasts, and you know, I thought, well, here, you know, it's got a girl from the Rez and a guy from sort of, you know, kind of better off Rapid City kind of background, and actually it added more meaning to it because you could add more layers to it, and you know, there's, you know, some wonderful lines of dialogue in it that I think that reflect that.
So you moved it from Scotland to here, and you were able to shoot it in 18 days?
Yeah.
And you picked up a lot of local people? I mean, did you have a casting director who did that, or do you do it?
Well,
Who gathered all these folks up?
Yeah, it was funny because, I mean, for the leads, I actually had a casting director in Los Angeles.
Right.
And although my lead girl, Tamara Feldman, was someone that I pursued, and she was kind of the only person on my list. Before I came out, I researched online, you know, people with, you know, Indian ancestry, so to speak, that would fit the role in terms of the requirements of the role, and found her on a website. And the very first role she ever did was a guest lead on Smallville. I can't remember what tribe of character she was playing, but she just lit the screen up. I mean, it was incredible. And so I went after her, and fortunately got her, and then auditioned others and got Trent Ford for the lead male, and he's, you know, pretty well established. He co-starred with Mandy Moore in quite a successful film, How to Deal, a few years ago, and his first major film was Gosford Park, which was the legendary director Robert Altman directed, and a couple of years ago co-starred with John Voight in September Dawn, and, you know, at West Wing he was recurring in for a while, and, you know, so they're pretty well established. And also this chap Chris Robinson, who is in his, what, I guess he's probably early 70s now, and he came in.
So, I mean, Trent Ford or Chris Robinson, I mean, if they're fairly well established in that, I mean, you're not some big operation coming in and wooing them. I mean, you're selling them something different.
Yeah. Well, it's a funny thing. I mean, with Trent, it was a couple of things. I mean, Chammer was already cast at that point, and when he came in for the audition and read opposite her, she was a big selling point for him because
they clicked, or they connected.
Yeah, well, she's quite brilliant, really, and he was very excited about the prospect of working opposite her, and but also it was a departure for him, and it
something
wasn't
different. I mean, so
yeah,
his interest.
I mean, it was. I mean, some of his best known roles are more kind of the romantic lead in, you know, more mainstream fare, and this was something grittier, and but also I think it's that thing where actors just, they want to be working. And with the case with Chris Robinson, I mean, Chris used to be very, very well known in the 80s for playing Dr. Webber in General Hospital when it was in its heyday, and that was he was one of the leads. I mean, there's fame, and then there's soap opera fame. I mean,
I'm not quite a General Hospital person, so
yeah, well, me neither.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't pick up any of those people out of a lineup, but at the same time, I mean, obviously for a different audience, and also I think in the 80s, I think it's changed a bit. I mean, one of my favorite stories from the film was Arlette Loudhawk, who plays a role in the film. We were filming at her house on her birthday, and it was a scene she was doing with Chris, and she told us. And she was this was the only person she was sort of a little starstruck about, because when she was at college, she said she used to run home to watch General Hospital when he was in it. And she just kept referring to him as Dr. Webber. So, you know, that was a beautiful moment for us. But, you know, I mean, Chris, for him, he had been doing television for many years. Although in the 70s, he actually was a television director as well. Directed some shows like Baretta and Barnaby Jones, and some actually, you know, pretty big shows. But he hadn't done a feature film in a long time. It's mainly been television, and certainly nobody had given him a role like this. Even though it was a supporting role, but it was certainly a different texture for him.
So,
but you were also asking about the local cast
Right.
as well.
How did how did you bring them together?
Yeah, well, they were the ones that we found out externally, and then there was a couple of days we did do in LA, which sort of replicate for some interiors in Rapid City, and they were people we found out there. But apart from that, everyone else was sourced locally, and I mean, Arlette I'd known, and the thing with Arlette first and foremost was that physically she would fit believably as, I think, the mother of Tamra. I mean, and that was kind of important to see that there. Some others had got in touch with me. I mean, Moses Brings Plenty and Tokala Clifford, and they both
Have done work.
and probably two of the better established people out here.
So they heard of it. I mean,
yeah,
it was announced in the industry.
Yeah,
or?
yeah.
Okay.
We put the word out. I mean, it was known in LA, but out here, the South Dakota Film Office put the word out, and a couple of the other South Dakota film, groups, committee type things, had put the word out, and so we had some submissions that way, and but the funny thing that we found is that apart from that, when we got to some of the smaller characters, sometimes if the more we planned, the less it worked. And in terms of some of the really small supporting characters, I had a couple of people working for me who live on the reservation who were fixers in a wonderful way of getting some things organized for us. And sometimes they would just go to big bats. We needed 4 guys, late teens, early 20s, and had a couple of lines.
Like the Hitchhikers, or
exactly. Or there were 4 guys in with Tokala in a scene, and all around his sort of age, and we got 4 guys taken along that were just amazing, and those sorts of things work wonderfully. Whereas on another occasion we had someone for a bigger role lined up about a week in advance. On the day of filming, he had just decided to, he was too busy, and when I phoned to try and persuade him, his wife just told me he was out feeding his buffalo, and I mean, they do have buffalo in that family.
got cold feet?
I don't know. I mean, but the funny thing is that we then had to grab somebody then and there, and
it worked?
Worked wonderfully, actually better, funnily enough, and that sort of often happened. It was we went to it was actually Ken Hart. We went by his tire store when he still had it on the sort of main strip, and he came out, and he had just the perfect presence, but there were also, because again, the script was something that was translated to here, so it was from the 2 different worlds. So we did spend some of the time sort of in the surrounding sort of white community, and initially it was all written to be done in Rapid, but then as I started looking at the area, I started realizing actually Rushville fitted pretty well, because there was a pawn shop quite central to the plot, and the pawn shop there just worked perfectly, and I toured all the ones in Rapid and none of them fit, and I suddenly started realizing that actually it was kind of more interesting having some of the things happening in small town America rather than a city. And I met with the Plains Theatre. There's a Sheridan County Players at Plains Theatre in Rushville, and actually there's some incredibly wonderful performers there, and so I auditioned them there, and actually drew out some supporting characters there, and actually it would be nice to have had more characters, because there were a few people there who were really terrific that we didn't really have a chance to use much because they didn't fit any of the characters, and so yeah. But I mean, like it was just a case of embracing it and just seeing how it all played out. I mean, it's very much the opposite way of how you normally make a movie. You normally go in with a very, very precise schedule and everything lined up and
planned out.
Yeah, and for me it was very much the opposite here. And the thing is, and what worked well about it, what I was proud about, was not being stressed out about it, but really I did just submit myself to the fact that it would all work itself out, and the schedule changed dramatically, and sometimes because of the weather, I mean, but sometimes because of availability of locations would fluctuate a bit, but it always pretty much fell into line, and just in the natural way, and I never really panicked about it. It was.
So you shot this actually when?
It was the end of 2006, and then I spent about 9 months editing, and then
And where'd you do that?
it was between Los Angeles and a little bit in Scotland.
Okay.
And then the music, which takes a while, and the sound design, which takes a while. And then it premiered about a year ago at the Montreal World Film Festival, which is one of the most prominent in North America. It used to be the most prominent in North America, but its heyday is a bit over. But and then since then I've been touring, festivals, mostly in the States and a couple in Canada and some one in Europe and Bermuda, and been getting around.
So, is that the life of the film? I mean, at some point, does it make any formal tour or release to theaters, or is it more of just an independent film? I mean, how does it work?
Well, the thing is that most films nowadays. There's so many films being made now because of technology and because of actually a lot of states giving quite high tax breaks, and a lot of times things get made that shouldn't get made. So there's so many films in the marketplace that are struggling to find any audience whatsoever. I mean, the Sundance Film Festival, where pretty much every indie submits, had something like 4,000 feature films submitted last year.
And they showed how many?
They probably selected about 30 for competition.
30 out of the 4,000.
Yeah. And then they show some international and some bigger hitting mainstream films.
Yeah.
And, but out of that 4,000, a few you have to sift off as just being a bunch of guys and their mates out in the woods with a camera. But in reality, when you think about it, you go to your average person and you say, well, how many films can you name from last year? It's less than 100. So it's a struggle to kind of get attention if you are playing in that pond as a little fish. For me, the approach that I'm taking at this point is that there are very few films set in this world here, in terms of Indian country and that type of thing. Although my film purely is a universal story, it really could be shot anywhere, which is a bit of a departure, because normally the only films that have been financed on reservations have been very culturally specific, based on other works or that sort of thing.
And that universality was really what allowed you to move it from Scotland to Pine Ridge.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I could have shot it in Rio or Marseille or anything. But because of that, and also because we got reasonably well-established cast and that sort of thing, suddenly to that audience, to the audience interested in films set in this world, we're competing with maybe 2 or 3 titles a year, in terms of the size that we are. And so really that's my principal focus right now, while we're getting it out there distribution-wise. Now the other thing as well is that I'm actually quite committed to trying to see more production built in these areas. And the other thing is, for me, it's also in part about breaking down a cultural apartheid, I think, that exists within the film world, where you can say there's progress. 20 years ago, there was nothing being made like a Smoke Signals or Skins. And the fact that there now is an improvement. But it's still a cultural apartheid when the film industry is saying, well, we'll give you some money to go and tell your stories in your world, rather than saying, well, this is a great story, where do you want to set it? Oh, you want to set it there? Fine. It's just not really in the mindset that you can set any sort of movie here. And although saying that, and I know different people have different takes on the film in terms of history or whatever else, but Mel Gibson went and did Apocalypto, about a culture with a language that nobody can speak. But the clever thing that he did with that film was, in the very opening scene, he has these young guys out hunting, and he creates a scene that's almost like out of a late 1970s frat house movie, like Animal House. It's a bunch of guys monkeying around with each other, and he immediately creates a universal context and situation that everyone embraces. And then after that, you've got a run-around action movie. I mean, that's the thing with Apocalypto that I think is quite clever, is that he's actually just made a summer blockbuster, but happens to be set in a culture that nobody had the imagination to do it in. And so that's the thing for me. I have a number of other scripts set in sort of Indian country, a few in Pine Ridge and some elsewhere. But generally, they're thrillers, or they're, there's one which is sort of a bit more of a detective story type thing. And for me, it's a great location for drama and for all kinds of things. So I want to see that increase. And one of the things about, at the moment, the DVD release that we've done recently, at the moment we're focusing it through our website to sell. That way we're getting the revenue back, rather than it being, the film industry is terribly corrupt for the producers getting very little back. But the most important thing is, this way I know who the audience is. When they buy it, I have their email address, so that when the documentary is finished, or any other of the projects that I would like to do are done.
You're building your own mailing list.
Exactly. I can immediately take it to them, whereas if I do it through the traditional mechanism, I lose all of that. And if Rez Bomb performs, then, I had money that I put into the reservation through the production. Now, if the world gives me that back, in terms of buying the DVD, then the pot is refilled, and I can go back out and repeat and build. And from an economic development point of view, it's quite exciting. If the world embraces it. But it's early days on that.
Sure.
But what was also very important to me was, I didn't want to just, as happens in the past, just shoot the film and then you finish it and you put it out into the world and not let people see it. But the other thing is, I want them to see it on a big screen, so that's why I've bought a projection system, and I'm wanting to take it around.
So you're here for the next 2 weeks?
Yeah,
and
more or less.
You're going to be showing it at different places around the Rez?
Yeah, wherever we can, really, that's big enough and has chairs, basically.
It's called Rez Bomb. It's about 90 minutes.
Yeah.
But you don't have a schedule yet as to where it's going to be.
No, at the moment we've got Billy Mills Hall booked for Monday. I was mentioning to you earlier that the plan was to do some afternoon and evening screenings, although technically I've got to actually have more of a look at that, because there might be too much light seeping in. But
if it's at Billy Mills in the evening, it would be at what time?
Probably about 8
Okay.
p.m. I'll be posting flyers and things, promoting it that way.
You'll send the stuff to KILI, so
Exactly.
we get the word out.
Yeah, and then on the Friday, the other one that we've got firmly booked in at the moment is in Rushville at the Plains Theatre. There, we're going to be showing it on the Friday night. I think they're talking about 7:30 for that, and that's nice as well, because we actually filmed down there as well, but it's actually quite nice because it's it's a formal theatre, and the screen really fills the screen, so it actually we've really made a movie theatre out of that. But the thing is, I'm really interested in people in the community, suggesting where they think would work. I would love to show it as out in Wembley and Kyle and as many of the far off corners of the districts where they'd be harder to go to Billy Mills.
And to show it, the essentials that you need to show it are
basically a hall, and if we're shooting it, if we're showing it in the day, then preferably one that can be dark, or in the evening we just need to do it once it's darkened down. Just with a like a 12-foot high plus ceiling and chairs for a decent amount of people. And also just that's very accessible to the community, really. It's whether it's a cap office or a school hall. The advantage that's been suggested to me about doing it in a school is that the film does appeal to sort of late teen, early 20 audience, and it's just kind of plugging straight into that. And so I'm very open to people coming forward and.
Okay, so back up here.
Yeah.
Describe the film. Is it a young people's film? Is it a drama, a mystery, action film? And you're saying that it best works with an audience that goes from 15 to 25, or
well,
what are you saying?
That's what I thought anyway. The leads are in their 20s, and they're a great-looking couple apart from anything else. The funny thing is, shooting a small independent film here, but I guarantee Hollywood would struggle to come out with a better looking leading couple than I've got in this film. But
You're not prejudiced or anything.
well, it's just they just happen to be. I think if you're doing a love story, it certainly helps if either side of the audience.
Is there chemistry between those two?
There is.
Okay.
And but it's a love story thriller, and it's quite an edgy
story
piece.
thriller.
Yeah, it's quite an edgy piece. It's the young couple get into trouble with a moneylender, and it's kind of against the clock to fix it. But there's a lot more to it than that.
Now you have Russell Means in this picture.
Yes.
What's he do?
He plays a sort of a gambler. He plays a sort of card sharp poker player kind of guy.
Did he do okay?
Yeah, and the wonderful thing about it was, initially in the script, it was kind of written for someone. Initially it was sort of a guy in his sort of 40s, and it was initially going to be a white guy. And the most important requirement for that character was charisma. And so
Russell kind of oozes charisma.
yeah, so that and I think that was the thing when you just sort of look what you have on the page and you suddenly go, well, hold on a second, I'm missing something.
But he's in the 60s.
Pretty major here. Yeah, but he has what it takes,
Okay.
and so that was wonderful. And
How did you get in?
I said, Russell, do you want to do it?
And he said,
Yeah. Oh, and it was wonderful. We actually did a Q&A together.
but of course.
Well, no, I mean it was I first met Russell the first day I came out here in '99, and we did a Q&A together at the Santa Fe Film Festival, and it was really wonderful. For the first chunk of it, I did most of the talking, and then Russell started to talk to the audience about the film, and one of the things he said, which was actually very funny, was he said, because he's used to working on, or started working on massive films.
Last of the Mohicans.
Exactly.
Big screen stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And when he pitched up for the first day's filming on Rez Bomb, I had a minuscule crew, and I was filming this card game, and I just had them play cards, and I was running around getting all my shots, and it worked wonderfully on screen, but to most people it would just seem crazy. And Russell said to the audience at Santa Fe that he went home that night and said to Pearl, his wife, Steve's delusional, because this can't be real, because it's just him running around with a camera doing all these things. And then he said to the audience, but I look on the screen and he says, Steve, I don't know how you did it, because visually it's a very visual, striking movie, and the editing is technically very high and all those sorts of things. And so he was very, very pleasantly pleased. But also he said how wonderful it was to see a film where you see contemporary Indians, and there's not an alcoholic, and there's not some mystical old guy with all the answers. They're
Away
just
from the
people.
stereotypes.
Yeah, they're just people.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with it. That's the thing where, whenever I've had any responses to it, it's just, well, they have moneylenders everywhere. They have them in Scotland. That's why I wrote it that way. Then you have parents who are disapproving of the girlfriend or the boyfriend of their children, and these are universal themes. It was funny sometimes how people jump on things as well culturally. My previous film was a thriller, and there was a hitman in it who in the script was Serbian. And I had this screening in Montreal, and this guy came out at the end and with his thick Serbian accent, and he said, I enjoyed your movie, but why did the hitman have to be a Serbian? That's kind of predictable, stereotypical, and whatever else. I said, well, I auditioned a guy from Iceland, an Irish guy, an American guy. Just so happened your countryman happened to be the best actor for the role. If your countryman wasn't as good an actor, he would have been from anywhere. It sometimes works out that way. But yeah, and so I think that was the thing for I mean, like Tokala Clifford, who played Harmony's brother, the role played by Tamra. I mean, he turned up with his hair kind of in braids and things like that, and he had this whole persona created. And I think that was what he really enjoyed about it. He turned up the way he wanted to create the character. He wasn't turning up because the director wanted, sort of generic Indian A, B, or C, in terms of in buckskins or in this or in that. I mean, I think for him it was wonderful to be treated pure and simply as an actor. And that was the thing, everyone, it just is the way it is.
Sure.
But that's the thing that for me is frustrating with the industry, is that it's constantly there, and it goes to a lot of cultures. A lot of Chinese actors have similar problems, and I'm sure a lot of Middle Eastern as well. I mean, so it was nice to break from that.
Let me run down. We mentioned Moses Bringsplany and Tokala Clifford. There's also Ken Hart, Angel Mills, Robert Waters, Jesse Blackbear, Sean Keith, Harmony Blacksmith, Starlight, Jeff Whalen, Tony Garnett, Janet Moran, Heather Tuma, Mandy Whalen, Roman Leftwich, Brandon Fasthorse, Bruce Jacobs, Tyson Blacksmith, Daryl Piponhead, Bridget Mills, Zania Little, Ira Mills, Benjamin Mills, Deandra Mills, Summer Mills. So those are some of the local people in the film.
Yeah.
Rez Bomb, 90 minutes.
Yeah.
But you don't have a schedule. You're going to be around for the next 2 weeks.
Exactly. And I mean, a few of those people are very, are in it and out for a second. I don't want someone thinking I'm going to, getting too excited.
Extras and
yeah,
stuff
exactly,
like that. Yeah.
exactly. But it's very, very local.
But they're in it.
Well, they're in it, yeah, for sure.
And you can see them.
Yeah. And anyone who's kind of curious and wanting to know whether it's something they would be interested in seeing, just go to resbomb.com. The trailer's there. There's links to reviews on the website. The blog's there. We're also twitter.com /resbomb and Facebook. And you can monitor, and we're posting blogs all through our tour here and details of where we're going to be playing there as well. But the trailer's there, and that's the big selling point as well. People get a handle on whether it's their sort of thing. But actually, there was my last film festival was Tiburon in Northern California, and there was a guy there in his mid-70s who said to me he thought it was one of the best films he'd ever seen. So my idea that it was sort of 15 to 25 or whatever as the audience went out the window at that moment. So, but it depends on people's taste. But I'd just like to say, anyone who has a relationship with any of the school halls or CAP offices, just email us through the website or resbomb@live.com.
Is this film rated?
It would be R.
Just for R-rated.
Yeah, for language.
Language.
Yeah.
Okay. So currently it's set up for Billy Mills Hall on Monday evening at what time?
I'd say 8 p.m.
8 p.m. And then.
But hopefully earlier if we can get if it does turn out that we can actually screen it.
Darken it up.
Yeah.
And then Friday evening at the Plainsman Theater in Rushville at 7:30.
Yeah.
Now those are the two set times right now, but there will be others.
There will be others. Yeah.
As they become available over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. And the idea is we just run around the communities with flyers and knock on doors and that sort of thing.
This is your what? How many films have you done?
It's my fourth feature film.
And you haven't done anything since then. I mean, is this your most recent?
Yeah,
feature?
yeah. I mean, it's because you spend. I mean, like last 10 months, I've been promoting it through film festivals, traveling with it, that sort of thing. I mean, it's a lot of work.
And you have to focus on. I mean, you can't multitask. And I mean, because you're wearing so many hats, you can't be working on another film at the same time that you're really pushing this.
Oh well, yes, but through this time, I mean, in the last year and a half, I'd also written a screenplay which is out in Hollywood at the moment, which is a thriller set in Alaska, and I've also written a TV series that I'm trying to set up in Scotland, or I've written the majority of it. So I've written sort of 400 pages of original material in that time as well, and and actually, one of the things I've also been doing recently was setting up the DVD. There was a lot of work involved because I there's about 3 3/4 hours of extra features on the DVD, including the commentary. But there's I did a series of documentaries about life around Rushville, as well as there's an interview I did with Russell Means.
Yeah.
There's also some other things I shot around the res, and so because it's, I mean, I have people buying it from around the world, and I wanted to give them a deeper understanding of the area. So these are things that I shot. I came out at the end of last year and I shot some more of that as well.
So the DVD is available now?
Yeah.
Ordering online?
Online. Actually, and a little note for people here. If you go to resbomb.com, there's a shop link on it that takes you straight through to the shop. But on the shop, there's a tab there which says Locals Edition. Now, if people from Pine Ridge or Rushville click on that, they can buy the DVD through that special hidden link for $5 less than everyone else, because I wanted to discount it for all the
And
local
what's it
people.
cost? What's the DVD?
It's normally $20. It's $15 there. We'll be selling them also
At the showings?
At the
around
showings,
okay.
yeah. Although what I'm going to do is, because I feel if people have paid to go through the door, I'm going to take another couple of bucks off the DVDs there as well if they want to buy it after they've watched it.
Okay.
So yeah.
So is there an Apocalypse Now film for you down the road? I mean, is there something that you really want to do at some point in your life?
Well, I mean, I have a lot of scripts that I've written, but there's one which is sort of my opus in a way, although I've not had a chance to work on it for a while because it's very big. And it's actually the one that kind of took me out here, which is the one that deals with this story. I call it Three Prophets. It starts off with the story of Wovoka, and then the next story is in the 2-3 years in the future from when it will be shot, set in LA about another prophet, and then the last story is in deep space 200 years from now with the colonization of a planet and a third prophet.
Okay.
But the whole point is it's about trying to bring people full circle back to being kind of naturally in touch with themselves and living a real life, like not being a stockbroker.
Like not being a stockbroker. You have been listening to an interview with a young man here, Stephen Lewis Simpson, who started out at 18 being the youngest fully qualified stockbroker and trader in Britain. He is now a filmmaker. At 22, he went to LA, jumped in with Roger Corman, the king of the B movies in this country, but who gave many, many people a start in the industry. And he's now completed his 4th feature film. It's called Rez Bomb. He will be here on the Rez for the next 2 weeks to show it. There's 2 set times, Monday at Billy Mills Hall at 8 p.m. and could be earlier in the day as well. And then Friday at the Plainsman Theater at 7:30 in Rushville. But he's looking for additional places to show it, whether a cap office or a school, wherever across the reservation over the next 2 weeks. And how do they get a hold of you?
Well, they can email me at resbomb@live.com, or go to resbomb.com website and you can just click on the contact link. I can also give a cell phone if that works as well, if people want to immediately get in touch. I don't know if that works for...
Go ahead. What is it?
It's 605-407-1419. That's
Okay.
605-407-1419. But I'd also just like to take a quick opportunity to thank everyone that helped us along the way in the production, and also on every other time I've been here. I mean, the reason I keep coming back is first and foremost because I have a lot of fun when I'm here, and I've made some great friends here, and so I want to thank everyone for that.
Well, let's do this again. I mean, it'd be nice after 2 weeks that you've shown this film around to come back and visit again.
Definitely.
Do a postscript type of deal.
Yeah.
And look ahead.
Yeah.
So let's do that.
Great.
Okay? And once again, the number, if you have a place that you could show this film, a place that could be darkened and has some seats and that.
I have all the equipment.
Okay. Call him at 605-407-1419 or go on his resbomb.com, place to click on there, or the email address is, once again,
resbomb@live.com.
Okay. Well, once again, we've been listening to Stephen Lewis Simpson. I thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
And I look forward. I hope everyone who has a chance to see the movie gets that chance. We'll try and communicate to people when and where it's being shown, other than the two that are set up. Once again, Monday evening at Billy Mills in Pine Ridge at 8 p.m. and Friday evening at the Plainsman Theater in Rushville at 7:30. Other than that, we'll let you know.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Coming up, we have, I thank her very much for her patience.